the final precept. One says to abstain from narcotics and liquors. The other liberal translation, favored by the great scholar Dr. Malalasekara, is I abstain from being intoxicated by these things. So if you drink and don't get intoxicated, it's okay. Once a scholar, a Chinese, said to me, you know, before you start meditating, just have a couple of martinis, because it increases your progress by about 6 months. And the reason why these precepts are undertaken is not for a sentimental reason. It is not going to make you into a good person. It is that for anybody interested in the experiments necessary for liberation, these ways of life are expedient. There is a wonderful meditation called the House That Jack Built meditation that the Southern Buddhists practice. He walks and he says to himself, there is a lifting of the foot. There is a lifting of the foot. The next thing he says, there is a perception of the lifting of the foot. And the next he says, there is a tendency towards the perception of the feeling of the lifting of the foot. Then finally he says there is a consciousness of the tendency, of the perception, of the feeling, of the lifting of the foot. And so, with everything that he does, he knows that he does it. He is self-aware. This is tricky. Of course, it's not easy to do. But as you practice this, you will find that there are so many things to be aware of at any given moment in what you're doing that at best you only ever pick out one or two of them. Ordinary conscious awareness is seeing the world with blinkers on. As we say, you can think only of one thing at a time. That's because ordinary consciousness is narrowed consciousness. That's being narrow-minded in the true sense of the word, looking at things that way. Then you find out that, as in the course of going around being aware of what you're doing all the time, what are you doing when you remember? Or when you think about the future? I'm aware that I'm remembering. I'm aware that I'm thinking about the future. But you see, what eventually happens is you discover that there isn't any way of being absent-minded. All thoughts are in the present and of the present. And when you discover that, you approach samadhi, the complete state, the fulfilled state of mind. And you will find many, many different ideas among the sects of Buddhists and Hindus as to what samadhi is. Some people call it a trance. Some people call it a state of consciousness without anything in it. Some people say that it is the unification of the knower and the known. I had a friend who was a Zen master, and he used to talk about samadhi. And he said a very fine example of samadhi is an excellent driver in a car. Makes the car his own body, and he absolutely is with it. The samadhi of which Buddha speaks is the state which is, as it were, the gateway to nirvana, the state in which the illusion of the ego as a separate thing disintegrates. When we get to that point in Buddhism, Buddhists do a funny thing. They don't fall down and worship. They don't really have any name for what it is that is, really and basically. The idea of anatman, of non-self, is applied in Buddhism not only to the individual ego, but also to the notion that there is a self of the universe, a kind of impersonal or personal God. And so it is generally supposed that Buddhism is atheistic. I love the story about a debate in the Houses of Parliament in England. And somebody got up and said, it's perfectly ridiculous that Parliament should decide upon this because, as we well know, there are quite a number of atheists in these benches. And somebody got up and he said, oh, I don't think there are really any atheists here. We all believe in some sort of a something somewhere.